English teacher made us sign a paper saying we can't talk in class. But then I got detention because I whispered to help a kid who was having a panic attack while she was busy grading papers. I remember the sound first. Chairs scraping against the floor, kids screaming, the pounding of my heart inside my ears like a war drum. My throat was closing fast, and I couldn't breathe. I was clawing at my neck, my vision blurring, when I looked up and saw her, Miss Blade. She was smiling while I was dying. I begged for the EpiPen. Everyone begged. But instead of helping, she sprinkled crushed peanuts on my desk like she was seasoning food. "Allergies aren't real," she said. "It's all in your head." That was the moment I knew I might not make it out alive. And then, just as I felt the world slipping away, I saw Tommy collapse. He was gasping too, his eyes wide with terror. Except he wasn't just struggling to breathe, he was going blind right in front of us. The room turned into chaos. Kids banging on the locked door, someone smashing a chair against the cabinet where the EpiPens were kept, Miss Blade standing there, blocking the way, saying, "This is exposure therapy. You'll thank me later." My lungs burned. My skin felt like fire. I could taste death creeping in. And then, darkness. When I opened my eyes again, I was on the floor of the hallway. Paramedics hovered over me. One of them whispered something that froze my blood. She was gone for 3 minutes. I had been dead. But before I explain how I ended up dying in my classroom, you need to understand how it all began. It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday. We had a substitute teacher that day because our regular one was sick. The school didn't tell us much about her, just that her name was Miss Blade, and she'd been subbing around the district for a while. She walked in wearing a long gray skirt, a stiff blouse, and glasses that glinted under the lights. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The first red flag was how she treated us the moment she stepped in. She didn't take attendance, didn't ask about the lesson plan. Instead, she looked around and said, "In my classroom, I don't believe in weakness." Most of us shrugged it off. We were used to weird subs, but the longer she stayed, the more uneasy we got. Halfway through class, I pulled out the protein bar from my bag. I didn't realize until the first bite that it was peanut flavored. My throat started tingling almost immediately. I froze. My hands shook. I knew what was coming. I stood up fast and said, "Miss, I need my EpiPen. I'm allergic to peanuts." She didn't move. She just raised an eyebrow. "Sit down. Allergies aren't real. It's all in your head." I thought I misheard her. My chest was tightening, and my classmates shouted, "She's serious. She has a life-threatening allergy. The EpiPen is in the cabinet." Miss Blade walked to the cabinet, pulled out the EpiPen, and held it in her hand. For a second, I thought she was going to help me. Instead, she tucked it into her pocket. "You kids are too coddled," she said. "Doctors have lied to you. The only way to cure a fear is to face it." That's when she took a peanut packet out of her bag, none of us even knew she had them, and sprinkled them on my desk. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I tried to run, but she had already locked the door. She dangled the keys in her hand like it was a game. "No one leaves until you learn that nothing is wrong with you." That's when Tommy stood up. "She's gonna die," he shouted. "You're insane." Miss Blade ignored him. But then Tommy's face changed. His eyes watered, his lips swelled. He grabbed at his throat and stumbled. He had a peanut allergy too. When he fell, the room went wild. Kids ran to the door, banging with fists and backpacks. A couple tried to wrestle the keys out of her hand, but she shoved them back. She towered over us like a wall, calm while we were fighting for our lives. And me? I couldn't breathe. My airway was almost shut. I felt myself getting lighter, like I was floating away. Then someone smashed the cabinet glass. I don't know who, it was all a blur, but Miss Blade yanked them back before they could grab the EpiPen. I remember collapsing to my knees, clawing at my throat, my ears ringing. My vision tunneled. The last thing I saw was Tommy on the floor, his eyes glazed and empty, as if the world had gone dark for him too. When I opened my eyes again, I was on the floor of the hallway. Paramedics hovered over me. One of them whispered something that froze my blood. She was gone for 3 minutes. I had been dead. But Tommy survived that day, but he was never the same. His eyesight never came back fully. He walked out of that classroom half blind. That was just the beginning. Because what happened after, what the school did, what the police uncovered, what Miss Blade tried to pull to save herself, was worse than anything I lived through that day, and it would lead to something none of us could have imagined. The hospital lights were blinding, but at least I could breathe again. My throat was raw, every swallow felt like swallowing fire, and I could still hear the paramedics' voices echoing in my head. 3 minutes! She was gone 3 minutes! Tommy was in the bed across from me, his face pale and his eyes unfocused. His parents hovered over him, crying and whispering prayers. I overheard the doctor say something that made my stomach twist. The damage to his optic nerve is permanent. He may not regain full vision. I wanted to scream. We had almost died in a classroom, while a woman with a teaching badge stood there and watched. The police came that same night. 2 officers, notebooks in hand, stood at the foot of my bed. They wanted details. They wanted everything. "Tell us what happened," one of them said gently. I told them everything. About the protein bar, about Miss Blade refusing to give me the EpiPen, about her sprinkling peanuts on my desk like some kind of ritual. The officers exchanged a look when I mentioned she had the peanuts already in her bag. "She brought them with her?" the taller one asked. "Yes," I whispered, "like she planned it." They wrote that down. By the next morning, the story had exploded. Parents stormed the school demanding answers. Kids were posting videos of the chaos online. Someone had filmed Miss Blade locking the door and laughing while Tommy begged for help. It went viral in less than an hour. But here's the part that still chills me to this day. Instead of being immediately arrested, Miss Blade walked out of that school free. The district called it a misunderstanding. They claimed she was using alternative teaching methods. The superintendent actually said, "We are investigating whether this was a case of miscommunication." Miscommunication? I had been dead, Tommy was half blind, and they were calling it miscommunication? The community erupted. Parents organized protests outside the school. Some carried signs with my name on them, others with Tommy's. They chanted, "Protect our kids," while the district offices stayed locked with security guards posted at the doors. Meanwhile, Miss Blade was still out there, not fired, not arrested, just out there. And that's when we started learning things that made everything so much worse. It turned out Miss Blade wasn't even a licensed teacher. She was a long-term sub, hired through an agency the district had been using to cut costs. No background checks, no proper vetting, just a name on a list. When parents dug deeper, they discovered complaints against her from other schools. Stories of her humiliating students, locking doors, and even using exposure therapy on kids with phobias. One kid, terrified of spiders, said she had actually brought a tarantula to class and forced him to hold it until he wet himself. The district knew, and they kept letting her work. That's when the lawsuit started. My parents filed one, Tommy's parents filed one. Dozens of families threatened to pull their kids from the district. I thought maybe, just maybe, justice would finally catch up to her. But then the news dropped something that flipped everything upside down. Miss Blade wasn't just a substitute teacher. She was the sister of a high-ranking school board member. And suddenly, things started to make sense. Why she wasn't arrested, why the district tried to sweep it under the rug, why they called it a miscommunication instead of attempted murder. She had protection. But she didn't stop there. 2 weeks after the incident, when I was finally back home, a letter arrived in the mail. It wasn't from the school, it wasn't from the police. It was handwritten, shaky letters on yellow paper. It was from Miss Blade. "Dear, my name," it began. "I am sorry you misunderstood my methods. You were never in danger. You only believed you were. That's the sickness I'm trying to cure. One day, you will see I was right. If you continue lying to the police, I will have no choice but to expose your secrets too." I froze, reading it. Expose my secrets? What secrets could she possibly mean? I didn't even have time to process it before my mom snatched the letter out of my hands. When she read it, she went pale. She called the police immediately. But when they came, the officers just shrugged. "It's not a direct threat," they said, "just her opinion." Opinion? She was threatening me in writing after nearly killing me in a classroom. And then, 3 nights later, things got worse because Tommy disappeared. His parents said he went out to throw trash late in the evening and never came back inside. The trash bin was still open, the lid swinging in the wind, and his glasses, the special ones to help his damaged eyesight, were lying in the driveway. No note, no phone, no trace. The police started searching. Helicopters, dogs, volunteers combing the woods. Nothing. And then, a single photo appeared in his mom's email inbox. It was Tommy, sitting in a chair, his hands tied, his swollen eyes staring blankly at the camera. And standing behind him, smiling the same cold smile I saw in the classroom, was Miss Blade.